Good morning, fourth graders and Mrs. Greer's class. When you go to your classwork today, you will see November 2nd to 4th, and you'll need to scroll down. The red dots were Monday, and then Tuesday have these white squares. You'll need to check where it says Everyone Daily Assignment. When you click on that, you will see your check-in, your specials. Science is not a live Google Meet. Reading and Language Arts is a live Google Meet, and you'll be working on your critical thinking questions. When you click on critical thinking questions here with the link, you will open a page and then you'll click on this, which I already have opened, and it'll come up. There are 3 questions here, 4 slides, but the first slide is the directions. What Joe did is the story that we read last week. Critical thinking questions. Please use the race method to answer each question. R, restate the question. A, answer all parts of the question. C, cite evidence from the text. And E, explain your answer or your reasoning. And so that means that when Mrs. Greer is reading these, she doesn't want one sentence as an answer. You should write 3 or 4 sentences for each answer. And so you'll see in question number 1, even though it is slide 2, the question says, what does Joanna do to TJ's jump shot? Why does he react the way he does? Well, the first thing you'll need to do is get your reading book and get to the story, What Joe Did, and you'll be on page 182. And when I looked back in this story, I remember that Joanna swatted TJ's jump shot. So when I'm restating the question, so that's R, I'm going to have to write Joanna swatted TJ's jump shot into the next court. So that's, I'm answering it. Why does he react the way he does? Well, we know from the story that TJ got really red and he was kind of upset and embarrassed. So I'm going to say TJ was embarrassed when Joanna blocked his shot. And now I did my R, I restated it and I answered it. But now I need to cite some evidence, meaning I need to use words from the text. So if you look on pages 182 and 183, you'll see it says his face was so red that he couldn't hide his embarrassment. So when I cite, I'm going to write, I know this because in the text it says, and then I'm going to use quotation marks, and that's next to the enter key on your keyboard. And I'm going to copy those words right from the text. His face was so red that he couldn't hide his embarrassment. Then I end my quotation mark, and I guess I spelled that wrong. I end my quotation mark because that is the ending of what I copied from the book. So as long as you put quotations there, you can copy from the book because you're telling the reader, these are not my words. These are the author's words. And now, so I restated the question, I answered it, I'm citing from the text, and then E means to explain. So I know when I get embarrassed, my face gets red. So, and if we think about that story, TJ was probably embarrassed because his shot was blocked by the new kid, and it happened in front of his friends. And so we don't know yet in the story that Joanna's a girl, but they just think that Joanna is a boy and he's a new kid. He's wearing a hat, but the new kid blocked the shot and it happened in front of all of his friends. And so TJ was a bit embarrassed, so his face got red. So you'll notice that in this answer, I had to have at least 3 sentences to be able to answer the whole thing using race. Now, if you need to, you can pause, and I can make this a little bigger for you all. That might be helpful. You can always pause to finish copying this before you go on to the next slide. All right, question number 2, which is slide number 3. Recall a time you watched a basketball game or played in one. Was there one player who stood out from the members of the other team? What were your thoughts as you watched this player? So some of you play basketball on the playground, some of you play on a basketball team. Many of you have probably seen basketball on TV. And even if you haven't, you can make it up. So no one's going to call your house and ask your family, did you really watch a basketball game? And so I'm thinking about a time that I went to a professional basketball game in Washington, D.C., and I got to see Michael Jordan play. And it was a very long time ago, but I'm going to restate the question using race. Once, when I watched a basketball game, I noticed that one player stood out from the rest of the team. All right. So, was there one player who stood out from the members of the other team? From the members of the other team. So yeah, I'm talking about that. Once I watched a basketball game, I noticed that one player stood out from the rest of the team. So I just restated the question and I'm answering it. I'm saying, yes, I did. What were your thoughts as you watched this player? So now I want to talk about what I noticed while I was watching the game. I would say this player had the ball a lot. And every time he shot the ball, he scored. While I watched him play, I thought, now I'm answering that second part of the question. What were your thoughts? I thought about how good he is and how much time he must spend practicing to get that good. Right, so you'll notice again that this had to have at least 3 sentences to answer the question completely. I restated it and I answered it. We're not citing from the text because I'm recalling a time here that's a personal experience. So I don't need to connect it to the text at this time, unless Mrs. Greer asks you to. But let me make this a little bigger for you. Remember, after you have read this, you can pause and finish typing. You might want to write something different because you watched a different basketball game and you might have noticed other things about the player that you watched. Now we're on the last question. It is slide 4, but it is really question number 3. And Mrs. Greer is asking you to look back on pages 186 and 187 of the story. And on these pages, this is when the boys discovered that Jo was really Joanna because her hat fell off. And they want to know, were they pleased? Meaning, were they excited she was a girl? Were they upset? Were they angry? Describe how the boys reacted. So I need to restate the question using race. All right. So when it says, when the boys discovered that Jo was really Joanna, were they pleased? So I'm going to just use the same words. When the boys discovered that Jo was a girl, they were, and I'm going to say shocked, because there were quite a few feelings there when I look back. TJ was not happy, but the other boys kind of thought it was cool that she was a girl and that she could play. So they were pleased at the end, but not TJ right away. TJ does make up with her, but not right away. So I'm going to talk about that. At first, TJ was upset. Now I know this because now I restated and I answered my question, but I'm going to cite from my text. I'm on the C for race. And so when I go back to pages 186 and 187, I know that he was upset. I know this because in the text it says, and this is where I'm going to use my quotes because I am copying from the text. I can't believe it, you guys. We've been playing basketball with a girl. TJ said with disgust. Now, disgust there tells me that he was upset. He's not pleased. Disgust would be the opposite of pleased. Now I'm going to end my quote because I'm done copying. But I also know that the other boys were not disgusted because they were giving her high fives and asking her to play again. So I'm going to tell them that. But the other boys on the team were pleased. And now I need to cite from the text about that so I can say where I got my evidence. So again, I'm going to write, I know this because in the text it says, now once again, I'm going to have to use those quotation marks because I'm copying from the text. The kid with the Bulls jersey approached Jo and gave her a high five. Now, I'm thinking about this. If I give somebody a high five, I'm not usually upset with them. I'm not disgusted with them. I'm pleased with them. So, also at the end of the story, boys invite Jo to play with them again. So now I'm thinking, this makes me think they're not upset with her because if you were upset with somebody, you wouldn't ask them to come play with you again. So I'm going to write that. Because now I'm on part E, race. I'm explaining my answer. This makes me believe the boys are pleased with her because if they were not, then they would not have asked her to play with them again. All right, so I used race. I restated the question by using the same words. Were they pleased? I just said they were shocked, and that's my answer. And now I'm citing it that I know they're shocked because, or that TJ was upset because he said it with disgust. But I'm describing how the other boys reacted because they were pleased. And I use my cite again. I'm using the text because they gave her a high five and that they invite them to play again. And then I explain that they are probably pleased because they invited her to play with them again. Again, this is a long answer. Now, remember, you're in fourth grade. And so you should be able to write more than one sentence for your answer. It is always okay to pause before submitting your answer so you can read this again. I also believe that Mrs. Greer is doing this with you in class, but if you miss her Google Meet, this might help you. All right, I'll see you live during our Google Meet.